Hello, Pong Stars, and welcome to the Rathole. This is your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten, here with my co-host, team owner, Drew Mahowald. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on the Rathole.
It's truly wonderful to have you here. Just what have you been up to lately? What's your deal right now?
I have I shouldn't say that. Work's been actually really busy, but it's that time of year, getting ready for football. This is kind of entering my favorite few weeks slash months of the year. Better weather, football's back. Like it's kind of everything all at once. Plus, golf is still available for the time being, so all of that is great for me.
Yeah, fall's definitely my favorite. Getting pumped for the upcoming season is always a good time. I've been doing a lot of reading in preparation for the draft. I recently read a book. It's called Tigana by Guy Gabriel Clay. So we're doing book reviews with Drew here today.
Of course.
So Tigana, it's a great book. I would highly recommend it to folks. Essentially, the plot of this book is that there is a kingdom called Tigana that they had the misfortune of killing somebody important who is invading their country. And as a result, due to some magic in the land, the name of their country was completely erased from everybody's minds except for their own, the citizens of this place. And as a result, our protagonists are trying to restore the name of Tigana across the land by defeating the tyrants of the province. So, yeah, Drew, what are your thoughts on Tigana? I know you have a lot of them.
Of course, yeah. As a big reader of books, I read a lot. I spend a lot of time. Yeah, a classic bookworm. That's what all my friends call me. That's what my family's called me for a long time. So Tigana, it's one of my favorites. I can't even do this. I can't.
Yes,
I can't.
It's wonderful to hear that. It's for me, a ranking out of is a 36.1 out of 37.4 for me. What about you, Drew?
I give it a 6.9 out of 7.0.
That's a great rating.
Pretty good.
It's a nice rating.
Yeah, I was very pleased with the read. I was entertained. It was exhilarating. It's great.
Yeah, let's just say, for those of you who are obviously intrigued by the story of that Drew and I just talked about here, there is a non-zero chance of a sex scene in this book, and it gets steamy. If you're listening to it on audiobook, especially, and you pull up to a stoplight, that was a interesting time to be in my car by myself listening to that section
Wow.
of the tome.
This is getting to be a very interesting episode, Zach, of the Rathole.
Yes, it was. I'm gonna have to rate this one explicit. Let's just say that. Just even talking about this book, there were sex scenes in this book. So 36.1 out of 37.4. Pick it up. It is an old book, so you should be able to find a copy cheaply. But anyways, this book reviews with Drew. Let's get on over into some more news around the league here this past week. Lots of news around the NFL. I think the biggest one that's hitting our league right as we get to the keeper deadline here was, of course, the injury to Travis Etienne. And Drew, just your thoughts on what that means for the league.
Yeah, I think there was some discussions that kind of came up in the group chat about potentially moving that keeper deadline. Actually, Josh started the conversations about, what happens if there is a significant injury to a keeper in that 2-week window. And I don't know, it just got me thinking that in a game that is already evolved so much around luck, trying to eliminate as much of that as possible is probably a good thing for everybody in terms of keeping it as competitively fair as possible. But we've talked about it. We will probably bring it up when the next time around to make some real proposals is. But I mean, it brought up some thoughts for sure, and then it certainly, I know I probably wasn't the only one who went straight to Josh and asked about the trade value of James Robinson. So
absolutely, and he ended up getting a great trade out of it. It looked like a couple of picks in some future years for him. He ended up trading Godwin, of course, not Robinson.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I know that Josh had been, reaching out to some folks asking about.
I know he had been struggling too with like making sure he had a good second running back, or and then all of a sudden he had an embarrassment of riches there, where he had 6 guys that were certified keepers, and he had the ability to trade one for some picks at the end. So, it's one of those injuries where, like, as a fantasy owner of the other guy, you kind of are happy about it without cheering on injuries. It's kind of a really good thing for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Eichten sounds like he'll bounce back, and he hasn't had his true rookie season now yet, so we'll see how he does in the NFL. But seems like the kind of guy that'll be able to bounce back into that. But it also gives James Robinson one more year here to really prove himself as a solid lead back. I don't know. I think that was one of the more disrespectful picks, I thought, coming out of the actual NFL draft.
I didn't like it at all.
Just given how well your back did in the year before drafting a back in that first round.
Right. Yeah. It was weird, but Urban Meyer's just always been weird. So
weird dude. College coaches, man. Strange.
Yes.
We had our in our league news here, of course, we had our keeper deadline this past week. Or this past Tuesday. We're recording on Wednesday right now, so we're not even 24 hours removed from that keeper deadline, and it is a solid batch of keepers here, I gotta say. Some really good names out there being kept. I'm pretty happy across the board with who folks are keeping. I think that it's going to provide a really solid base for competitiveness during this upcoming season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's why I love about this format. You have 5 players, and there's so much strategy that goes into which of the players you'll be kept. And it also, in a way, it doesn't even out the playing field, because obviously there's some teams with a bunch of really, really high level keepers, but in a way it allows the rosters to be a little bit more balanced out right after the draft, where some of those, if you had a team that had 8-9 keepers on it, you kind of balance that out with some of the teams that may have been bottom dwellers the year before.
Yeah, absolutely. But just as we move on here, of course, we have our draft coming up in just under 2 weeks now. That is, of course, the Tuesday after Labor Day, September 7th. Looking forward to that. As I mentioned in the group chat, anybody who wants to is able to. My house will be open for a draft gathering. Want the details on where that is now. It is no longer in Minneapolis, so hit me up. Happy to get that to you. And then this is breaking news, actually. We have our Pong Stars weekend that's technically supposed to start on September 10th here. But breaking news is that there will actually now be, barring a complication, an activity on September 9th, the Thursday night beforehand. And that Thursday night, of course, is going to be Sam Olson stand-up comedy in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Barring a complication, Sam is planning on coming up on Thursday so that we're able to gather in Minneapolis Thursday night and go see him perform live stand-up. And then we don't have to come back to Minneapolis on Friday. Is essentially what would be losing a night up at the cabin. So with that, hopefully we'll be able to do that. It's going to be at Sisyphus Brewing Company in Minneapolis. They have a great stage there. And I'm really looking forward to finally seeing Samer be able to perform.
And we will 100% be getting video of this and saving it for the archives.
Of course. It's going to have to go on that Twitter. In addition to that, of course, we have our second punishment of the league, none other than a calendar from team owner Thomas Strawn that is due by draft day. And we're really looking forward to seeing that and all of those glorious pictures from the Thomas Strawn prior to draft day as well.
That I'm not sure my eyes are ready for that. Depends on the pictures, of course. Depends on the setting and the types of photos that we are awarded, I suppose.
I am expecting
the pictures,
risque photos, to say the least. I'm not expecting
maybe some photos
frontal, but I am expecting
maybe some photos of tight ends.
High thighs. High
photos,
thigh
some
allowed.
photos of tight ends.
There has to be photos of some tight ends in the calendar.
Yeah, that would only. That's the brand. You can't go away from the brand.
Well, they don't call him Thomas the tight end Strawn for nothing.
Correct.
Say that. Looking forward to that one too.
Yeah.
All right, Drew, let's head on over to that fun fact of the week, though. All right, this one is coming at you live from the Sam Olson here. And we're looking just at his 2020 through 2015 through his 2020 season. So not including this year at all yet, because we don't have full data yet for this year. But Sam Olson has taken over 6 fantasy seasons. Sam Olson has taken 17 Denver players in his fantasy football drafts. 17 out of over 6 years. So in a single draft year, obviously we have 16 rounds. I was including keepers in 2020 as well. 17 over that. So that's 16 spots times 6 years, which essentially gets Sam 17.7% of his total draft capital so far in the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League has been for Denver Broncos players.
And, you know, that Denver Broncos offense has been just an absolute juggernaut the past few years. So you can't blame him for drafting all of those Bronco players dating back to the Brock Osweiler times. And I mean, my goodness, that offense has been so lethal. You can't pass them up. The Philip Lindsays of the world.
Philip Lindsay's got to be my favorite one. Although I do want to
CJ Anderson.
There's a few. Yeah, CJ Anderson in the second round in the 2017 draft is a tough one to see. Oh yeah, there's some rough ones in this pick. None quite as egregious as Philip Lindsay. I mean, if we're being honest, though, Philip Lindsay should have been around 0. I mean, Sam took him as early as he could get for good reason. But
I think the lesson learned here, though, is it's almost worth it for us to be thinking of taking Broncos now, because Sam will make the trades to get a Bronco, right? Like, he values Broncos more than anybody else, and so it's almost worth like us moving up Broncos on our draft boards to where he will, if he doesn't get them in the draft, he'll make a trade for them out of desperation and stupidity.
Well, right, as of right now, no keepers from the Denver Broncos for Sam Olson.
Right.
Are
there any in the entire league? There's probably not any in the entire league. There's no Broncos kept.
No way there is.
There's no way.
There's no way.
Melvin Gordon's not kept, is he?
Melvin Gordon is not being kept.
None of those receivers. He was. I know Sam was thinking about Sutton, but he didn't pick him.
Ended up going with different, probably better keepers.
Yes. I don't think there is.
There is not. This is a lot of Denver out there. It's starting quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, of course. Very excited.
That's number 1 on my draft board. So
I figured got to back up Patty M over there. But yeah, congrats, Sam, on your nearly 18% draft capital spent on your Denver Broncos.
It's it's no wonder Sam's had so much success in fantasy football.
Yes, especially in the postseason. His postseason rounds have been,
all those Denver Broncos really come to play when it's week 15, week 16.
They're usually in the hunt for something. So it's, they're playing their starters and really getting after it and making a splash in the league. But congrats, Sammer. We'll see where that draft strategy takes you this upcoming year. Speaking of the draft, though, let's talk about our rankings here on the keepers for each of our teams coming into this upcoming season. I think Drew and I can probably both agree that there's a clear number 1 here, but the rest of this league really is sort of up for grabs at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to start it just because I think we both have the same number 1.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Which I have the lock Plopstas, aka team owner John Stevens, absolutely loaded for his 5 keepers, and he was able to finagle a trade too out of down the stretch there, and a couple of guys that he really couldn't keep, but knew they were worth draft picks. So overall, I really like his roster, obviously leading the way with Nick Chubb there. And then, I mean, he's got Aaron Jones and then Devontae Adams, that Packer duo, plus Darren Waller, easily one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends, and then Gibson as well. So that's a pretty solid starting 5, I suppose, for John.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I'm ranking these in my analysis here is there's a draft tool that I have used in the past that ranks players based off value, which is looking at expert consensus ranking, their ADP, positional scarcity, stuff like that. John is the only team that started with a value above 30 coming into this keeper season, which is really good. A 30 is a really hard thing to get. So it's a props to him for being able to capitalize on those players coming in at 30.1 there.
Yeah, and I feel great about trading him both Jones and Adams a couple years ago.
Yes, very, very smart of you to make that trade.
Great work that? By me. Adam Thielen, Cooper Kupp, and Marlon Mack, I think was the deal. Something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It certainly has not panned out in my favor. I'll say that.
No, it hasn't. But you got a good team anyway, so who cares? That's in the past, right?
Well, I made the championship.
Imagine trading away Derrick Henry. Who would do that? Either me.
I mean, I also did that, but then I got him back.
All right, so let's start with number 10 then. Or after, so we got our number 1, obviously.
Okay. Fair enough.
Let's start with number 10.
Okay.
Who do you got?
I mean, I think this is a no-brainer as well. I think there's a clear number 1 and a clear number 10. That's Thomas, in my opinion. So Thomas's team has kind of taken a nosedive, and the whole Deshaun Watson situation obviously is not helping him out.
Nope.
But he does have probably the strongest tight ends in the league, so he's got that going for him. But then other than that, he's got Ronald Jones, who, I mean, in Tampa, who knows what running backs and get touches between that Jones and Fournette. Keenan Allen, certainly a great option at receiver, and then actually trading for Allen Robinson in terms of purely the keepers is a good move. I'm just questioning the quarterback position there for Chicago a little bit. Whether it's going to be Fields, whether it's going to be Andy Dalton, I'm still not confident in that guy. While Robinson's a good player, who knows if the ball will be on target all the time. So, I mean, clearly the weakest at the running back position, I think, in the league right now. But a lot of question marks there for Thomas' team.
I think out of all running backs being kept, Ronald Jones here is the weakest on the board this year. So kind of a bummer that's the star player. But, you know, when your other top guys, Le'Veon isn't on a team, James Conner is now backing up Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's kind of it was almost a lot of the perfect storm of guys either deteriorating or, you know, being accused of sexually assaulting like 25 women. I mean, it all kind of came together there for Thomas.
Yeah, definitely a tough situation. All right, who do you got in your number 9 spot?
In the number 9 spot, so this might be a little controversial because of some of the praise we've given this person for building a team, but I have Tony here.
Really?
And the reason being, so obviously I think that receiver tandem is terrific, and it's just important to make sure we keep in mind that we're making these based off keepers for this year, not into the future, where I think that Jefferson Diggs duo into the future is perhaps the best duo in the league. But there's a lot of concern for me on, well, he doesn't have a quarterback, and the 3 running backs, obviously they all have talent. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was used not so great with Kansas City last year, didn't get a ton of opportunities. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are still kind of in a timeshare there with the Ravens, plus Lamar Jackson carrying the ball.
Yep.
DeAndre Swift, kind of the same thing where you don't really know what the Lions' offensive situation is going to be. So still some question marks there. I think there's obviously a ton of potential, being that they're all young guys that could have a breakout season. But I kind of need to see it before I rank them a little bit higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand where you're coming from there. I have Tony ranked a little bit higher. Tony is in my he's actually number 5 for me coming into this season, which I think is, it's a lot of value placed, I think, on this year being like just how young of a team Tony has. I think that
the
could
thing
be,
is we need to factor in, like, this is not factoring in that he has 3 first-round picks and the number 1 overall pick. So like you add that in and suddenly his team is a lot stronger. So
exactly. I think I think all 3 of these running backs are really solid. I think Diggs and Jefferson are both really solid. I will say that my one concern is that the youth factor, any one of these guys, like their breakout year could have been a one-off. We just don't know. There hasn't been enough data points yet to determine a trend. And
I also think it's Jefferson's probably due to regress. I don't think he got a ton of targets last year, a lot more than he probably will this year, just based on regression. I mean, you don't see a guy come into the league and get that many targets that quickly. So
exactly,
it's just, I mean, again, he did a great job building his team, and it's just that now it's kind of like, all right, time to put up the production. Now it's time to show that you've made the right moves here. So it's a low ranking, number 9 for me, but I feel it's justified, I guess, to this point.
Absolutely. All right, who do you got number 8 here?
Number 8, our guy that we've already kind of hammered a little bit in this show, but it is Sam Olson in the Googled team names. Don't love Josh Jacobs with Las Vegas there. Keeping T. Higgins at receiver, even though he had the option to keep. Amari Cooper, also questionable. Kyler Murray's obviously going to have his explosive days, as will Calvin Ridley. And then I've made it clear that I'm a little bit out on Kamara this year with the Saints, just given that the quarterback won't be Drew Brees checking it down to him 9 times a game.
Yep.
So I think his value is dropped considerably this year. So I mean, there's potential there again, but it's just I'm not in love with that core right now.
Yeah, I have. I will say that I'm basing this off of purely just the math of what this outside sources really giving me here. I have Sam at 4th on my list. I think there's a lot of value still placed on Kamara. That's really bringing that score up.
And I'm admittedly much more jaded on Kamara compared to like the general consensus. So
also, I think Josh Jacobs has a higher value in this sheet than I would give him. So that's definitely skewing it upwards a little bit from where I may think Sam's true ranking is. But I will say that Calvin Ridley, as far as the source I'm looking at, is the 4th ranked receiver coming into this year. As far as potential. So that's definitely a huge boon for Sam. And T. Higgins is questionable, I think, as a keeper overall. Not sure if he's quite proved himself to be that level, but I will say, Sam's instincts on rookie receivers has not been terrible in the league. I think back to last year where we all laughed at him for reaching on Justin Jefferson, and look where he is. I mean, he traded him away for Cortland Sutton, and then through another trade ended up on Tony's team. But like Jefferson was a pretty good pick. So maybe Sam knows something we don't about Higgins there.
I suppose. I mean, yeah. Again, this is more of a Kamara thing for me, to be honest. Well, but both of his running backs, I think Jacobs having no involvement in the passing game either, kind of it derails a little bit of the value there too. So it's me kind of having a weak receiver too, and then me kind of being out on both running backs, so to speak, is sort of what it has him low for my rankings. Also,
we haven't really talked about this yet because this is our first team that we're talking about this. Keeping a quarterback is a strategy. Going into last year, 3 teams didn't keep quarterbacks. This year, I think it's 4. I am not convinced that keeping a quarterback is a good strategy yet, even though I kept one.
Well, if you're keeping a quarterback, you better be an elite guy that puts up, reliably puts up 20, 25 a week, and you don't have to worry about it,
Yeah, exactly.
because I mean, ultimately quarterbacks are your highest scoring, position every week. So if you can get a guy that's reliable there, I think it's valuable, but it's just, if after those, first 3 or 4 guys, it kind of gets, a little bit muddy where it's all kind of jumbled together and guys aren't that separated from each other. So
yeah. I do have so Sam's ranked 4th, but he's also there is 4 teams within a point and a half of each other in that close ranking. So
okay.
he barely is edging out, I think, mostly due to Kamara being on that team. But yeah, who do you got in number 7 here?
The Spring Chickens, which would be Brennan Swan's team now. Good old Swan. I think he kind of stumbled upon himself with the whole double quarterback deal with Rodgers and Dak and whatnot there. Ultimately kept Dak. Interesting move. I do think the Cowboys will bounce back quite a bit this year. I'm not big on Chris Carson. Godwin, I'd prefer Godwin over Evans if I'm taking a Tampa Bay receiver. So I like that. But overall, I that a weaker RB2. Now, granted, I don't even have an RB2 on my team right now. So,
True.
But I think I think essentially he's putting a ton of pressure on Dalvin Cook to put up 25-30 a week for him to be competing with some of these other teams.
Yeah, my thoughts here is that I actually really like Chris Carson. My problem with Chris Carson is his ability to stay healthy. He's never finished a season.
Yeah,
he's never finished a full season. And when I'm looking at a keeper level talent, I mean, I kept Carson last year. I do really like the guy, but I don't know. There's a lot of injury potential on this team.
There is.
And I'm worried that Dak, Dalvin has been injured before. Carson, Godwin has had lingering issues. That is just my biggest hesitation with Brennan's team. But overall, I like the composition. I think that trade for Godwin was really smart. I think Godwin's a much better receiver than anybody else that was on Brennan's team that was looking at being kept.
Yeah, that's probably a good point.
And I actually have Brennan ranked 6th. So this is our closest match so far.
There we go.
People are, except for Thomas and John, I should say. Clear number 1, number 10. Who do you got number 6?
So here I have Lucas. And we were talking with Zack before we started the show that the fact that we are only grading this on the keepers is kind of going to favor Lucas a little bit here because, while other circumstances are maybe a little weaker on his team with the draft capital, and maybe last year some of his depth got a little weak with all the injuries. But he's got Russell Wilson, who last year showed capabilities of being a top 5, fantasy quarterback. Saquon Barkley, who certainly could be an RB1, and he was a few years ago as a rookie. Adam Thielen, touchdown machine. George Kittle, tight end 2 or 3 in the league. And then Darrell Henderson, if he does now, the Sony Michel trade hurts a little bit there. I still think Henderson will have a big piece of that offense. And, if you're the running back playing for the Rams, you're going to have a ton of opportunity, as we saw Cam Akers down the stretch of last year. So I do like his team a lot. At least those 5 keepers. I think there's a lot of points to be scored there for Lucas.
Yeah, I think that, Lucas's team, the way it looks on paper right now is so much better than I thought it was going to be. So I'm super happy for that. I don't know. I have Lucas ranked 9th. I think that the Henderson value is not.
That's the biggest wild card. It's just the biggest wild card out of all of this. Yeah. I mean, because for all we know, Sony Michel could come in and just take the entire thing, or Henderson could come in and he could be the workhorse and put up girly numbers. I mean, that's the biggest wild card to me. So,
and then if Saquon can stay healthy, I mean, that's the thing is Lucas has not really had a season of Saquon yet since he drafted him in 2019 with that first pick. And if if Saquon plays, this team is going to look really, really good, I think.
Mhm.
And then my other concern really is Adam Thielen. I'm not sure how many games he is going to play.
True,
And
could be COVID exposure.
yeah, COVID exposures, and then there's also the regression of how many touchdowns he scored last year. That really kept
Which
him afloat
fair.
in fantasy value. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not super convinced on Lucas's team, but it is looking. I thought Lucas was going to be by far the last ranked team, and he beat out Thomas by a couple of points in this ranking system.
Mhm. Interesting. Okay.
All right, who do you got number 5?
I have Josh, number 5. One of the most explosive quarterbacks. Suddenly, James Robinson's RB2 value kind of really shot up with the whole ETN injury. Obviously, Zeke is one of those first round picks in a redraft league. AJ Brown. I mean, I'm unsure about him because with Julio's presence, I'm not sure if that helps or hurts him. It could be both, where he's not getting as many targets, but he might be able to do more with targets he gets.
Yep.
And then McLaurin is a wild card where it kind of is based on quarterback play. I do think Ryan Fitzpatrick has shown in the past that he can be good for fantasy receiver play in terms of going back to when he was with Tampa Bay and you had Mike Evans and going bonkers. Those weeks where Jameis couldn't play. So Ryan Fitzpatrick can put up numbers. Sometimes those numbers are interceptions, but he can be an asset to a fantasy receiver. So I do like, Josh's team. I think, that he's kind of got a lot of like almost elite players, like I would basically put all these guys in the tier below being elite. Like Lamar, I would put him not quite up there with the Rodgers, Mahomes, and Allen as a fantasy quarterback. Zeke, I wouldn't quite put him up there with, Dalvin, McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. Same with AJ Brown and McLaurin at receiver, but they're all really close.
Yeah, I have Josh ranked 8th coming into this, but I will say that this specific site yet has not taken into account the ETN injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make a call on how much value to give Robinson. I ended up just adding the value of Robinson plus ETN to come up with a conjunction there. It's not could be higher, could be lower. I'm not sure where that ranking is quite going to fall yet. But yeah, I totally agree. I had a long, hard thought about the interaction between Julio and AJ Brown for my own team, and ultimately decided that it was probably going to help both of them, that the other one is as good as they are. And I'm hoping that it benefits, Josh and me a little bit more, obviously. But I think that your assessment of being just below elite on every player is spot on here.
Mm-hmm.
I think any one of these players could be elite and could be an elite fantasy player. But something that really anchors a lot of the value in these teams is a solid RB1. And I'm not sure if Zeke is quite at the level where I trust him to be a solid RB1 this upcoming season. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of faith in the Cowboys offense being kind of bouncing back this year, assuming health, of course.
Right.
But I don't think Zeke is that good of a player at running back. I think he has a lot of really good PR from Ohio State days and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're getting that much touch or that much usage for an offense that has that many weapons, you're going to by default put up fantasy points. So
exactly. All right. Who do you got at number 4?
Number 4, I have the Gluten Freaks and Mr. Zack Eichten, the defending champions. Now, part of this is I sold high on Montgomery, so I kind of think he's going to dip a little after the strong finish that he had last season, which I appreciate very much. Eckler is another running back. He's kind of almost elite, not quite elite. But you do have, obviously an elite receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. Julio Jones is a bit of wild card, as we just talked about with Tennessee's dynamic there. And then Josh Allen is certainly an elite fantasy quarterback. So a couple of elite players and a couple other guys that are kind of borderline elite players that kind of power your team. So certainly, you can put together it's a good starting point to kind of build on to try and repeat.
So yeah, that I myself ranked 7th actually, just based off the numbers here. And that is directly tied to, in my opinion, the caliber of running backs that are my starting 2 guys here. As I said before, the thing that is anchoring these values and what is propelling some teams to be above the others is a solid set, like especially a single RB1 that is a plug and play top tier guy. Mm-hmm. And I think Eckler or Montgomery have the potential to do that, but I don't think either of them currently hold that position.
Right.
So just
I think Eckler's close though. I do think Eckler's close.
I think Eckler's close. I need him to stay healthy, and then we'll see how that goes. But that's really bringing it down. Also, I will say quarterbacks in this scale are pretty devalued. So having an elite quarterback isn't going to give you nearly as much numerical value in the system as like an elite couple of backs will get you. So even though I trust Josh Allen, and I don't love that I'm keeping a quarterback, just quite frankly. It worked for me last year not keeping one, but Josh Allen being the number 2 quarterback for fantasy is impossible to drop. You can't do that.
No, that would be wild. I mean, I would probably come in and swoop him up, even though I have Mahomes, because I think if you're able to, that's 25 points a week at the very least, it seems like, because even if he has a bad passing day, he's going to run for 80 yards and potentially a touchdown. And suddenly that's 27 points that you even on a bad day for him. So that's the nice thing about Josh Allen. Even when prior to this whole last year where he exploded as a passer, he was a good fantasy option before that because he was running so much.
Exactly. So I really like my team still. I think I would place, just based off looking at it, I would probably put myself, 4th or 5th, but the numbers are telling me 7. So that's where the ranking falls for me. All right. We got 2 and 3 left. Who's your number 3?
Myself, number 3, where we kind of had a discussion about elite players. I feel like I have 3 on my team. Mahomes, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill. And other than that, I think so at receiver, Evans and Cooper are very much both, I think, boomer bust players.
Yep.
And I think in a way that can be a good thing because I think Tyreek Hill was so consistent last year that I think I can get away with that. But Tyreek Hill every single week last year was 15, 20 points. Like usually he had 80 something yards total and a touchdown or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Couple of explosive games in there where he had maybe 2 or 3, but overall he was right in that sweet spot of 15 to 20 every week. So because of that, I feel I can get away with the inconsistency that Cooper and Evans will inevitably have this year, where they'll have 3-4 points in a couple weeks and they'll have that 30-point game. So that's it's kind of ballsy to kind of go out there with only one running back, which obviously that's going to be that's the big weakness for me, is only having one running back, and a big concern. But I have to hit that pretty heavy in the draft, and hopefully I find one that hits.
Yeah, I'm not convinced about that strategy. I have you at number 3 as well. Obviously Patrick Mahomes, you got to keep him, best quarterback fantasy in the league. Derrick Henry doesn't catch passes, but it doesn't matter. He runs it down everybody's throat, so he's getting the volume that he needs to do that. I think that getting Julio on that team can only help Derrick Henry because they'll have to respect the pass a little bit more. I mean, Julio as your number 2 receiver versus Corey Davis is a significant change in strategy for a defense, and having to make sure you cover, and that can only help the run there. And then I would say I'm still not convinced that Tyreek Hill is not going to be the boomer bust player that I thought he was going into the 2020 season. I think that,
that's what when I traded for him, I was thinking boomer bust, but he was turning out 18, 17, 19, like every week it seemed like. But I mean, who knows? Otherwise, if I have 3 boomer bust guys on my team, there is the potential for just a complete dud week. But then also there's that potential where I can put up 200 something in a week if all the cards fall into place.
Absolutely. All right. And finally, number 2 for both of us here, Noel Tigana.
Yeah. It does put into perspective that he's still number 2, and then like finishing 9th last year, kind of puts into perspective like how much injuries really derailed his season last year. But he's got the 100% running back one, McCaffrey. He's got another running back that could vault into the top 5, and Jonathan Taylor. I actually really like him. I think the Colts will go to him a lot this year. DK Metcalf emerged as a complete stud. I don't love Joe Mixon because that offensive line is like the Johnnies could probably be better, but and then Ayuk, it was kind of interesting that he actually picked up Ayuk off waivers like 2 days before the deadline. But I think I think he's got that boom or bust tag on him as well. Now, I did see that Noel omitted keeping Odell Beckham Jr. for Ayuk. And so that's a decision that I think OBJ would have been the safer play.
Yeah.
But he's certainly going for a little bit of he's getting spicy with this one, and I don't necessarily hate it. It's just it's a different move, and I think it's one that most players would not have made that decision.
I certainly would not have made that decision. I saw Lucas dropped Ayuk after Ayuk was marked as a keeper, which I was very much question mark on why you wouldn't just hold on to him, and because he was getting dropped the next day anyways. Why not drop somebody else when you make that trade for Russ? But whatever, that was a decision made by the team manager, and I am just quite frankly shocked that Ayuk is being kept on this team. I cannot fathom it at this point. It not that Ayuk isn't a good player, but given the options of potential other keepers that were, for instance, available via trade, like I know it ended up being, Godwin was suddenly available. Allen Robinson was available. Like one of the Cooper Kupp or Julio on my team was available for trade. Like, yeah, Noel didn't have a ton of trade like pick value for this year. He only has a few picks for this upcoming draft, but I'm still shocked that Ayuk made the list, even over players on his own team like Ayuk or like Odell Beckham. And in addition to that, this is giving, in my opinion, such a high value to Joe Mixon. I cannot agree with that, but the numbers are in there, so I think that vaults it up a little bit. But the rest of this team, McCaffrey,
it just seems like Mixon
Taylor,
the last 3 years now, he's been super highly touted as this going to be a great borderline RB1 player this year, and every year it's a disappointment for him, where he has like 1 or 2 big boom games, and then other than that, he's scraping for double figures. So
in my other league last year, I was pick number 10, and who's sitting there staring in the face?
You did not.
Joe Mixon.
I mean, you
have to take him.
The offensive line's got to be better before you can do that.
Yeah. And so I'm not big on Mixon. I think I would rank him a lot lower than what the expert consensus ranking is. But, overall, I think that Noel's team is really great. We're ranking keepers here. We're not ranking draft, but I think he's, given the lack of draft capital that Noel has for this upcoming season, it's going to be a tough one for him. But keeper wise, absolutely number 2 overall for me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we got for this week, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Stay aware for an upcoming sorry, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Very large, fucking hell. Very large rattle. Anyways. All right, folks, that's all we have for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned. We'll have our no, I don't want to do that. Sorry.
Now you're rattled.
I am. I'm fully rattled. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. We are going to be taking next week off. So stay tuned. We'll have an episode out after the draft, hopefully before the start of the first game. We'll have a rankings, a right before week 1 ranking that goes out immediately post draft. Make sure to fill that out when we get there. Hope to see all of you at my house for draft day. We'll see everybody in Minneapolis at Sisyphus Brewing for Sam's stand-up comedy routine. And then we'll see everybody that weekend that's able to make it, that isn't going to a wedding in Wisconsin. So all the cool kids. We'll see you there, or we'll see you on another time. Bye.
See ya.